educators and my dear teachers. Welcome to the second season of Bala and Bala Perspectives on Education. In this show, we discuss anything and everything that is related to the world of education. And if you haven't watched the first season, go ahead and take a look at all the episodes that we have put up. Believe me, there is a lot of learning that all of us have to do when it comes to education. As the name suggests, I have two Balas with me, hence the name Bala and Bala. So let me quickly introduce them to you, and then we will get straight into the topic of the day. To my right is the first Bala, Mr. Giri Balasubramanian.
Hello.
He's the former Director Academics of CBSE. Many of you may know him as Bala G. Sir, welcome to the episode. And to my left is Mr. Giri Balasubramaniam, also known as Big Brain, the well-known quiz master from our country. Welcome to the show, Big Brain.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get straight into the topic of the day. This topic has been discussed a lot after NEP was released into the world of education as far as our country is concerned. The topic, Bagless Days in School, the vision of NEP. So we are going to discuss about Bagless Days today. Sir, my first question is to you. Why is NEP suggesting bagless days in school? Because when we were in school, the weight of the bag only kept increasing. Nobody talked about bagless days. Why now?
Well, before I really go into the core of the question, I would like to say that if you consider learning in life, 90% of our learning right from birth to the last breath has been bagless. Right from the mother's womb down to everything that we learned through the play, through interactions, through listening, through music, through dance, everything has been bagless. And therefore, bagless learning has got a very important, significant impact on our learning universe. The concept of a bag is introduced when the child comes to the school. And unfortunately, the bag, which is supposed to contain certain materials, learning inputs which should trigger learning, has become the end all of learning. Therefore, people try to limit learning, draw the parameters of learning within the four domains of the textbook, four corners of the textbook, I would say. Therefore, the idea of bagless learning introduced by the NEP is indeed welcome. First, it demolishes the idea of learning through a book, through a bag, rather through a classroom. So all these are only instruments and triggers for extensive learning which should happen beyond the classroom. Therefore, the idea is good. Secondly, for years together, as you rightly pointed out, the number of textual materials, the number of notebooks carried by the children became so heavy, whether warranted or unwarranted. So a lot of research has gone on the impact of the bag on the backbone of the child. There have been cases where the growth profile of the child, the physical growth profile of the child has been impacted by the load of the bags, number two. Number third reason is that the bag has a psychological impact on the learning. So the weight of the bag, the use of the bag, impacts the psyche of the learning of the child. So the child thinks, I have to read what is in the book, right? What is in the bag. And even parents think that, have you read what is given in the book? Therefore, the psychological universe is also impacted. So I welcome the idea of the NEP, recommending bagless learning. And this will trigger a lot of informal learning, which I think has a very significant role in the current dynamics of learning.
All right, that was quite an insight on why bagless learning or bagless days in our schools now. Big Brain, let me move on to you. What will the children do in schools during these bagless days?
Sir is absolutely correct in terms of the larger definition of bagless. It's actually beyond boundaries. It breaks the boundaries that we have drawn actually ourselves. The funny thing is, bagless is not a new concept. If you go back to our Gurukula system, there was no bag. It was bagless learning. It was actually learning under a tree. So it was completely bagless. The whole universe was for you to learn. So there was a reason why the learning happened under a tree. So it meant that you sit there and sky is the limit. So there was no roof, there was no compound, there was no wall to the classroom. You first brought the walls, then you bought the bag, then you bought the book, and so you made it smaller and smaller and smaller. Now you're actually trying to do the converse and say, let's liberate the mind of the child to larger learning. Now, that can also create problems, like you rightly asked. What do children do? So to begin with, the NEP is actually advocated saying schools should allocate a day called Bagless Day, maybe preferably a Saturday or something like that, where the recommendation of NEP, not that it says the school must do only this, but the recommendation of NEP is schools could look at these Saturdays to focus on areas like vocational education, entrepreneurial skills, financial literacy, 21st century skills, skills for which we were not finding time on the timetable. You allocate a day to do that. Backless learning again is not necessarily a surprise element to schools. For example, club activities in school are technically bagless experiments. There is no book or prescription for, philately classes. They have been exposing children to these things. So I think for schools to quickly integrate bagless learning is going to be reasonably seamless. You are absolutely correct. To focus on what we will therefore do on that day is important for each school to draw out. But NEP has given a broad outline of what can be done. Schools can choose to go beyond that.
All right, wonderful. So, the next question for me is to you. Does informal learning on Bagless Days contribute to real learning?
Certainly, I strongly believe that does much more than the classroom, because informal learning is stress-free learning. Informal learning is largely experiential. Informal learning is a social learning largely. In informal learning, it goes more by the self-directed processes, and therefore the comfort level of the child is very good in informal learning. And therefore, informal learning is largely real-time life learning, right? And therefore, I think that the Bagless Days will do a great contribution to the learning profile and of the learner, and will infuse in the learner a sense of confidence, a sense of courage, a sense of researching aptitude, and the ability to explore knowledge, in the outer world. And therefore, I strongly believe that that is a very positive, attribute to the bagless learning.
Bagless learning. All right. Big brain. Is bagless learning truly stress-free and brain-friendly, if I may put it so?
Absolutely, yes. I'm a living example of that. In fact, to both your questions, back in school, we had a lot of activities. And you could sign up for whatever activities you liked or you were seen to be good at, and teachers sometimes put you into those things. Now, right through schools, if you talk to my classmates, they'll probably call me a jack of all trade. I was in a lot many things in school. Of those lot many things in school that I was part of what was called a reading club in those days. It was basically run by the library of the school. And the only reason I joined the library club or the reading club is because reading club students got 2 more books per month as compared to the normal class students who got only 1 book per month or 2 books per month. I'm not very sure. And I was a voracious reader. So I got extra books to take home, so I joined the club. There was a debating club. I was a reasonably good debater at school, so I was put into that club because they were grooming us to represent our school. So I was in a debating club. Third, we had what was called a knowledge club. And that metamorphosis of these 3 independent clubs all of which were informal learning, resulted in me eventually 10 years or 15 years later becoming a quiz master. Now, it paved the way for a career. None of these were classroom taught. It was all informal learning which led to a formal career. Now, extremely possible for us to channelize these things. It is definitely not stress at all. And the very fact that there is no stress in these bagless forums is what makes it attractive for the children.
Yeah, truly so, because I've heard many teachers and principals telling me that give the children anything beyond the curriculum to do, they're always excited because it does not put any stress on them at all. So they truly enjoy what they do and they do really well. All right, so the next question, sir. If the focus is on skill development on Bagless Days, how can schools be prepared for this?
Well, when you say skill development, skill is a very broad-based term. It could be a cognitive skill, it could be an emotional skill, it could be a hands-on skill, it could be a social skill. So, I would like you to understand that a skill is not restrained to a kind of a hands-on activity being done in the school. So that needs a lot of planning in the school. So the principal, the team, there should be a team in the school which articulates the kind of work that is to be done on these bagless days, and that could be done either in the school or these skills could be identified in the nearby environment of the schools, where there could be factories, there could be workshops, there could be artisans. A number of people are available where interactions could be done. As a matter of fact, you can invite a potter, you can invite a blacksmith over there, and you can even go invite a goldsmith and see how things happen, because skill doesn't mean that you are going to be a master of the skill overnight. But the very fact that the children are exposed to the kinds of skill that happens around is, I would prefer the child to be taken to a farming land nearby and see how the soil is tilled. I think that's also a skill that expands the universe, right? So the child, the learner is able to, apply his acquired knowledge to a given context when it is warranted at a time, period of life. So let us not believe that learning of skill restrains your growth profile in the life. That's a very mistaken notion in this country today, that you work with hand, that means you get a secondary job. No, that the very fact that this is a trigger, this is a gateway to open up your learning to a universe of opportunities across. Therefore, I think it needs a lot of planning. Every school should have a team to work on that. And one more thing, that it should not be a top-down approach in the school to tell the children that you must do this skill. I think what is important is let the child choose the kind of skills that he wants. Maybe he wants to take a photography. Why not? You have a photography club and he can work on that day and becomes a photographer later. And photography need not mean he's going to open a photograph shop, but he could be a good, visual, manager in the later period. So I think all that is required at this point of time is to open the minds of the children to a world of opportunities that exist.
All right, Big Brain.
I think Sir's covered it substantially. I have only one simple word of advice for schools. These are new areas. Some of these are areas where your school may have competency to handle it in-house. Some of these are going to require external partnerships. You need to bring in some professionals. Photography, for example, like Sir said, is not to teach the child to randomly go clicking. If you can bring in a professional photographer to show photographs, to explain what's in that photograph, etc., then I think the professionalism around that skill is what will get learned. And I think schools should be open, therefore, to bringing in external partnerships and building their skill capabilities for the benefit of the school. expecting the teacher to continue to take every additional load that is described in NEP is recipe for disaster. Don't overload our teachers.
All right, great. So, last question for both of you for the day. Will Bagless Days lead us to Bagless schools?
Well, the world itself is a bagless school. So I think the idea is that, when you talk about a bagless situation, it is very symbolic rather than, talk of a bag as a carryover on your back. No. I think the idea is that, that a bagless school should lead to a bagless world. Bagless learning is very important because as human beings, as people who seek to explore life, as people who seek creativity, we need to open up our mind to anything that is seen, that is heard, and that is interactive. And integration of our ideas with all that is around is the fundamental to creativity. So a person who cannot see and relate to things, who cannot listen to things, he will insulate his mind. So the idea of a bagless school is that you move beyond the textbook, you move beyond what is being told to you and go into a world which is absolutely open and listen to the rustling of the wind and probably the chirping of the birds. And I think that is the way that learning has to happen, because a lot of learning happens beyond textbooks, beyond science, beyond technology, right? And life is a great teacher. And I recall the famous words of the poet, "Nature be my teacher." I think this will lead to that kind of a situation.
Wonderful. Big brain. Will Bagless Days lead to Bagless schools altogether?
I hope so. I genuinely hope so. Again, sir has put it so beautifully, but I have a beautiful anecdote which I did not know. COVID gave all of us opportunities to spend time at home and clean our own homes. So I was actually helping my dad, who's now well past 85, to clean his cupboards, and he had actually a lot of memorabilia, and to put them in place. I found a bag. And I asked him, "Appa, what is this bag?" And he said, "It's the bag where I used to take my books." I said, "Your college bag?" He said, "No, to office." I said, "Why would you take books to office?" Now, he's an engineer. He had to take care of a factory. There were a huge number of calculations which had to happen. Drawings were there. He carried books and a bag to work. Today, we have bagless offices. So a day will come when you have bagless schools. So it's as simple as that. But I never knew engineers in those days actually carried reference books to work. He says, "I used to carry my books because I can't afford to make a mistake." So there is an era where people carried books to work, and I'm sure schools will slowly grow into this concept. It's a very deep meaning concept. Bagless is basically about saying, open your horizons.
Yeah.
Just widen your spectrum and look to the world, like he said, from a metaphor of the birds and the trees, where nature can be the teacher. I love that line. But yeah, I hope no more bags.
All right. While it may sound like Bagless Days or Bagless schools is a little frivolous, but like we have discussed here today, it will truly broaden the horizons and broaden the learning of all of our students that are going to schools today. Thank you so much for joining us here, ladies and gentlemen. And make sure you join us again in the next episode in the season 2 of Bala and Bala, Perspectives on Education. I'll see you there.